What's up, everyone? Let me try to invite our guest here. If you can hear me, just wave or comment in the chat. Let's see. Let me see what's up with the. Just invited the homie over here so he can hop on with us. Soon he should be on. Let's see. Send another invite over to him. Whew. What's everyone up to over here? About talk about agave today. Hey, what's up,
Hello.
man?
How's it
How you
going?
doing?
All
Pretty
right.
good. Pretty good. Do you hear me
Glad we
all
made it
right?
happen. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, man.
Let's see.
Uh,
I haven't done this before. This is saying send request. I don't know.
no, no, it was just probably from previous, because
Okay.
I sent you like a few of them. Yeah.
Oh,
You're on now, so it's all good.
all right. Cool. All right.
How you doing over there, man?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I was just out at the farm today. Are you out at your place right now? You said you were putting the
Yeah.
animals up.
Yep. I'm on the farm right now. I just put the goats up. Got the dogs just chilling right here outside, and I got up on uh on my phone so I could talk to you. But the animals
Nice.
are all good. I think I got a goat that's probably gonna give birth tonight or maybe tomorrow. So she's getting close. I gotta watch out for her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you have
she'll
a
be getting
lot of mesquite out there? I think we
no, not
talked about that a little bit.
naturally.
Okay.
I got a lot of baby mesquites, like 1 gals and quart size that I'm trying to plant out here, but it's gonna take a while
Yeah.
for them to grow. Like I told you, I like to plant from 5 gal and trees, even ideally when they're at a 15 gal stage.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm planting a bunch of trees because it started raining. So,
Okay.
pretty much in these little, 2, 3 months of rain is when they have the chance to establish before this onslaught of summer heat. So I try
Yeah.
not to put them out too early. I don't have to irrigate them because, like the Palo Verdes, I plant from 5 and 15 gal. Pretty much if
Hmm.
I hit them on the rainy season, I'm never having to do anything with them, and it's all good. But if I have to irrigate them, then it becomes an issue because, a lot of the times I'm consulting or I'll leave the farm for a few days and then it's like, whoever's here is just, managing a certain thing and it's too
Yeah.
much for them, because I could probably do like a job with 2, 3 people, but when you put the worker to do something, they'll never work like you. And
Yeah.
of course it's your company, but,
Well, you
um,
know exactly what you want to do.
totally. Yeah. But the mesquites is
Uh,
one like I want to really get into because a lot of those, really nutritious seed trees I really want to mess with, like the pulp, and the seed pods are just really packed with like, nutrition. So
mhm.
like a lot of the mesquite, I learned that you could distill it like a few years back, and then I was like really interested in a lot of those leguminous trees for that reason as well
Hmm.
because they're going to be nitrogen fixators for you and give you a
Yeah.
bunch of benefit in that way, but at the same time they're going to still, sorry, I got a text, I forgot where I was going with that, but they're still not going to take a lot of care for you, and grow
Yeah.
really on. Mhm. What have you been planting out there right now?
I'm losing you a little bit. I don't know if it's my signal.
Might
Did you ask
be
what I'm
me.
planting?
I'm out in the desert. It might be me sometimes too, but well, I just asked, what have you been up to planting recently?
Yeah. I mean, I think you and I are on the same page about planting things agaves. So I'll be talking about agaves. But
Totally.
in terms of trying to get stuff out on the land other than agaves, um, we have a good number of mesquite. It's funny, like that old saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. We have mesquite everywhere, especially in
Totally.
Southwest Texas. And farmers, ranchers,
Yeah.
for forever have viewed that as a pest, as invasive, as a
Yeah, I was just
problem.
about to mention that. They just bulldoze it, you know,
Yeah.
because it's all
Um,
ranch land, a lot of it, you know. So I mean, for them, it's like they've lost that like relationship with the trees, you know, because the old Texas ranchers, they knew like, the cactus, the mesquite, we use all of this, you know.
yeah. Yeah.
And now it's like a funny thing how we're talking where they just try to actually see it as a pest and get rid of it.
Yeah.
It's just weird, you know. That's why I guess the education is really important too, you know, because if people don't know that, then it's a huge problem for everyone. Yeah,
Yeah. I wonder, it seems to me like the tide is starting to turn, but I don't know if that's just like if you're into a specific community, you hear specific people talking and you're encouraged
totally.
by that. I don't know if that's like a critical mass of people or not yet, but there's a group here in Texas called Symbiosis. I mean, like the whole regenerative movement. I think there are a lot of people starting to talk about this. Like,
Hmm.
actually, mesquite is not always a problem. Actually, ash juniper trees shouldn't just be taken out of,
Totally.
when you want to build or when you
Yeah.
want to have a farm. Like, all of these different plants play a role. And so I think people are starting to see that it's like the pendulum. I think man
Yeah.
thinks that he can control everything and the pendulum goes far out. And it's just like, yeah, maybe
But I think
nature
too,
had its way for
it's
a
like a
reason.
lot of, yeah, I always tell people too, it's a lot of, like people always ask me, like, why are people hopping on the regenerative train now or the organic or trying to just be more holistic with their farm management? And I always tell them, like, for me as a consultant, I really think it comes down to economics, like people are seeing these farms be more profitable for farmers, So it's like, if you were a Texas rancher and then you see a lot of these, plants that are native there as something that you don't want to use or a pest, then you have a different management, right? Like style.
Yeah.
But it's like if you want to use that and integrate that, then your management style becomes less costly. Like I give an example of the Texas prickly pear, right? Like I have a bunch of that planted here, and it's like I brought that a few of those pads directly from Texas. I got some here from California, and it's like, because I had worked with a Texas farmer or a cattle rancher, and he was telling me how he's like now trying to plant a whole bunch of this stuff because, um, the drought basically made alfalfa in his area so expensive that he was trying to find different ways of forage, so and the same with the grain, right? So past 4 or 5 years, those two commodities have in a lot of places gone up 50 to 100%. So, if you were on a low margin, you almost had to adapt or go out of
Yeah.
business. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's like a lot of the consulting actually. It's like people are on the brink about to like go out of business if they don't like start cutting costs and like going regenerative, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of the times I'm trying to just cock cuss for these people and doing that as the regenerative way, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're laying down, I give an example, on your fields, $100,000 worth of, synthetic fertilizers, and then that goes up double. Now you're thinking more, okay, how can we use animals and take away the nitrogen cost, but then you still have a the same result or a better result by using the animals, right?
Yeah.
So I think people are learning that the economics is going to work for them too in these scenarios because it's just you know like we had it easy mode for like 30, 40 years, like industrial farming and medium-sized farmers where they just could buy these inputs relatively cheaply, but
Hmm.
now that that's kind of gone away, their margins don't make sense. So
Yeah.
they have to adapt or die pretty much.
The
Yeah.
the other factor in there is government subsidies, and
Hmm.
there's been a lot of propping up bad practices,
Yeah.
and it's like it's a false sense of doing things the wrong way is profitable. But you're right; those input costs start changing, or say the subsidies go away, or things not underwritten by
Yeah.
the government, or you're getting it from China, and all of a sudden they jack up the prices, or there's tariffs, or whatever. Like those are
That's
all
what
things
happens because
you can't control.
a lot of that fertilizer comes from Ukraine, and a lot of those areas are in war right now, so it's not coming cheap. And if it's coming, it's a small quantity, right? So
Yeah,
um, yeah, that's the thing. It just their whole way of farming changed, in such a short amount of time. It's like
yeah.
incredible. I think that many of them are still here, to be honest, but. Yeah, that's why I think it's good that people are starting to adapt a bit there. Yeah. Like
But we're
you're
trying
trying to
to.
plant agave, it's like Texas has a lot of native agave, a lot of native, cacti, native decilerions. I'm
Yeah,
always over here like, why is no one exploring that? So I'm glad to see, you're trying to explore that, right? Because that's a lot of the stuff I'm doing here. It's like, you can do the Americans way, you could say, of farming, which is like a lot of inputs, a lot of machines, a lot of
hmm,
tillage. But it's like if you just grow native California prickly pear here where I'm at, I don't need to water it, I don't need to care for it or do nothing. It's
yeah,
going to give me a product regardless of what I do, right? So
hmm,
I always think Texas is the same. You could do the same thing. You could just plant native, plant varieties and get lots of products from them and not really work too hard to get those products on the care side. You
yeah.
know, the tough part is identifying them, I think, and then it's all free game after that.
Yeah,
Because yeah,
I think it's. I'm sort of surprised too that it hasn't been more popular in Texas yet, and there may be people we just don't know about them yet. There's
yeah,
a group called Blasphemous. I don't know if you've seen them. They're doing an agave spirit. They're down near the border, and I feel bad for them. They had that the guy running that company, I think, has more of a family history, so
yeah.
they had maybe done that in Mexico for some period of time. So I think they were getting off the ground by importing some stuff and fermenting it here. But they had planted a ton of agaves, from what I understand, and I think they lost maybe thousands. So I mean, that's a
Due
real.
to frost
I
or
think, yeah. Well, no,
yeah.
hogs. I think it was
Because
largely
I know
hogs.
lots of people have planted tequiliana in Texas, and then it'll go well for like a year, even up to 3 years, and then you guys will get like a crazy,
Yeah,
cold cycle or storm that'll just knock them all out.
yeah. That's why I'm not.
Mm.
I'm not. I'm not trying to
No,
play with
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah.
As you.
Tequiliana, it's amazing.
But you.
I mean, they have a 27 Fahrenheit cold tolerance, and I'm like. I didn't think any of them would make it here because it gets down to 14. But I've seen a few cultivars that have done well out here. But it's not a species. I tell people in Mexico because they tell me, oh, is America gonna just like plan out a bunch of tequiliana and espadín throughout America? And I'm like, it's impossible. Like
Yeah.
they're all gonna die. What
Yeah.
we're gonna plant here is gonna have to be like a lot of Utahensis and Neo Mexicana hybrids or stuff like that because the cold is just going to destroy everything, but
Yeah.
it's
And
interesting. People on the East Coast will tell me like, oh, what agave or cactus can I plant here? And I have like huge list.
yeah.
So it's like there are lots of species that can make it, but it's not going to be those that like are, you know, generally Mexican, less cold tolerant species.
Yeah,
And
I would assume that you're going for agaves that are usually higher elevation, that high desert, real cold nights, real hot days. I would assume those are the ones that can do okay on the East Coast in the cold winters.
yeah, I mean, like, I have some, leniency because, I've been involved with agriculture a long time. So, like, I know about frost tarping, how to, like, I can do like a 10 or 15 degree tolerance, but it's like, it's a lot of work. So I
Yeah,
always am like, I tell people, I'm like, I could have 100 acres of tequiliana growing amazing. but the amount of labor that I would have to put into that is just extreme, you know, and
Yeah.
then it's not a very drought tolerant agave, like compared to Paris or Chrysanthemum or Chrysantha from Texas. It's like, you know, I'm more trying to focus, yeah, on USA varieties, but you know, I just get whatever is local a lot of the time, and then plant that out, you know, because
Yeah.
like I do the gardening, so
Yeah.
um,
Well, talking about
I
healing
just
the
get
land,
whatever. So,
so our property, I only have 12 acres, and it's slow going trying to get it populated, and but it's
totally.
been interesting to me. We've lost quite a few agaves to animals, and I've
Mhm.
seen out in California gophers are a big problem. But I think for me, it's
Yeah,
interesting because you see like this land that has been cleared and totally wrecked,
yeah.
and now that I'm in there trying to put vegetation back that does well in this environment,
No, that
like animals that are
animals
around
come
are
back.
like, yeah, they're like, oh my God, there's green
Yeah,
stuff here. It's full of water. This is great.
totally. The same thing happened here. You know, that's why like for years I battled, you know, the ground squirrels, and I just got to the point where I was like, all right, well, you know, the same how you just said, it's like, you know, I got this lot that had been kind of like cleared, and like, you know, I cleared portions of it and stuff. But when
Hmm.
I took away the native landscaping, you know, the animals were still there, like, yo, I need to eat, you know. So I'm over here planting agave. They come in and eat it, a whole bunch of it. I was losing hundreds of plants.
Yeah.
The first 500 cactus that I planted, all eaten. You know what I mean?
Really?
And then I was just like, man, this is insane. You know, like because I got to the point where I was like, well, maybe I can outplant them. You know what I mean? Like I can outplant what they eat. Nah,
Yeah.
because more ground squirrels kept coming. So they were just like, oh, we got a bigger buffet. You know.
Yeah.
So I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna start planting trees, cacti, agave, and I'm gonna try to bring back all the native landscaping.
Yeah.
So then I started bringing back all the native grasses, all the native shrubbery
Give them
from different
options.
lots that I had, give them options, you know. So now I have the natives plus my farm directly on top of it.
Hmm.
So they mostly go for cactus instead of agave or any of the trees.
Interesting.
And you know, now it's gotten to the point where I've outplanted them. So they might consume, say, you know, every week 20 cacti pads, but you know, I got every week 200, you know, or 300 coming out. So they're, I think, now an essential part of the farm. You know, I completely went 180 on it because instead of trying to battle them, I'm like, okay, now I feed them, right?
Hmm.
But what do I get for feeding them? It's like, you know, the gophers and the ground squirrels or ground dwelling rodents, they're not idiots. They're there because they realize you've compacted the soil, you've changed this ecosystem. So they're coming
Hmm.
in there to uncompact the soil. So what I started doing is just basically letting that little rodent be my researcher. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, it's going to tell me the places where I need to improve the soil, because it's really compacted and not, you know, such a good soil. So
Yeah.
then, you know, wherever it eats cactus is where I start to throw, you know, my compost, my, you know, manures or any mulch or anything like that. And, you know, I started realizing, okay, it's doing a job for me. It's improving my soils, you know.
Yeah.
So do you really want to get rid of an animal that's improving your soils?
Mhm.
You get me? Like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's a free worker. Because in landscaping, we go and aerate lawns, right? Like we pass a giant machine and we charge hundreds of dollars to aerate a small landscape.
Yeah.
So the ground squirrels or the rodents that do that, like, you know, gophers, they're just aerating your whole farm for you little by little,
Hmm.
you know, and you get the added root benefits of that and, you know, more root growth and
Well,
better plant
the
growth.
the struggle, not necessarily the struggle, but kind of coming to terms with it that I was having today is
Yeah.
like, how are you going to be frustrated about this? Like, this is
Yeah.
supposed to be the goal, right? Like, if
Totally.
you're committed to
Bring them back.
regenerating an ecosystem, and there are animals
Hmm.
coming back and they're eating your agaves, yeah, it sucks to lose an agave, but
Hmm.
something's working, right? Animals are showing up.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I always tell people. I'm like, because I've been to a lot of farms, and then it's like sometimes people will try to like be sly, you know, and be like, you know, I'm trying to help them as a consultant, and they're like, oh yeah, we don't use chemicals, you know. And then I arrive, and like the first thing I always listen for is the animals. Like if I don't see little rodents, if I don't hear birds, if I don't hear insects, I know some shit's up. You know what I mean? So it's like the first telltale sign of like the farm is failing,
Yeah,
ecosystem wise. And
that's
when you
very
and
interesting.
the reverse is true. When you start bringing in all the animals, it's like you're doing something good. You're attracting all the animals.
Hmm. Yeah,
So I always tell people it's like you have to find that balance, but you do that through these permaculture systems, where in polyculture systems where you're just planting a whole bunch of stuff, right? Because if you're only planting a monoculture of cactus, I did it, it all got murked. If I planted
yeah,
a monoculture of agave, I did it, it all got murked. So nature was my best teacher. It was like, what you're doing is not working.
yeah,
Try again, you know?
yeah. It will tell you.
So I tell people
Nature will
not to
tell you.
get bummed out. Yeah, like to learn from that stuff, like
Also,
I had
obviously,
another client.
go
Yeah. Well, I
ahead.
was about to say I had another client tell me the other day they had a like disease on their, cacti and agave, and I was just talking them through like, the cause that I had of that disease is like too much water in the soil, just
Hmm.
based like preliminary off of, the pictures I was sent. And then I'm like, well, you got a monoculture of agave here. You should try to plant some trees and cacti and native shrubbery and, do that to try to get rid of that drainage problem. Because, you know, like my point is, it's kind of how we were seeing the rodents as a problem.
Hmm.
This person's seeing the water as a problem, but water is not a problem, right? Like I'm collecting
Yeah,
it. I'm trying to get as much as I
yeah,
can. The water you have to use it to your advantage, right? So if you have too much water in your soil system, your soil's telling you you don't have enough plants here for
yeah,
me. I need more plants.
yeah. Plant
So
something to take that water
the
up.
root systems are shallow. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I recommended some native trees and different type of commercial trees you might want to plant, but we'll see what's up.
Yeah, well, I was out a couple weekends ago and I saw a hawk for the first time. And that hawk has been
Yeah.
back every week. Every time I go back, that hawk has been there. And I thought that was so cool. I was so pumped. I was like, all right. Because not only is it back to our point about more wildlife is coming, but that's also, that's another check within nature, right? Like that hawk is going to keep the
Hmm.
rodents in check. Okay. You want the rodents
Totally.
there, but if they get too many rodents, hawk
Yep.
is coming through,
Yeah, you
So,
gotta
um,
put some way of attracting those, hawks if you see they're coming. Like my whole thing is I'm a butcher, right? So it's or I do butchering part time sometimes, and it's like um I give a lot of that, scrap to my dogs or to the crows essentially. Like I'll leave little scraps out for the crows around the exterior of the farm.
mhm.
So they're always coming to my farm and they do the same thing. They're going after the rodents and stuff, right? So if
Yep.
you can find a way to attract those hawks a little bit more, you'll get more, or less rodent pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's back to the trees. So we've got the mesquite. After watching some of your videos, I've definitely gone and picked up some palo verdes. I'm really
Hmm.
excited about those. I think
Yeah.
they'll do really well here. Um, and then I've put in a couple trees over the winter to get some taller trees, higher canopy
Hmm.
trees, like some live oak, some there's like a Monterey oak I put
Nice.
in, and then a cedar elm and some ash junipers. So we'll see, kind of like sprinkling those around. I mean, I don't want to have the whole farm under canopy,
Yeah.
obviously, but you got to
Yeah.
bring something in, and I think having different canopy heights is a good thing.
Yeah, you could play with it. Like I mean, my trees, because I got the animals, so I'm going to be trimming them for forage as well as harvesting whatever seed or flowers they give that are edible. But that canopy, I'm planting them close to the agaves that maybe don't like full sun.
Hmm.
So it's like some of these plants that are young or maybe aren't as sun tolerant. I'll plant them close to the trees and use that canopy to my advantage, right? So in the
Yeah,
summer, I could trim them and then they'll get or in the summer I could keep that canopy and have shade on them. And in the winter, when I want more sun on them, I'll trim that canopy and feed the animals. You know,
yeah, yep.
so the canopy is something that could always be, played with. So, but then, yeah, you don't want to put. I agree. You don't want to put too many trees and then have too much work, because if you don't have if you're not using it for forage or something, it'll just become too much management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you said something that this raises a point I really wanted to bring up with you. You said some agaves that are not as sun tolerant, or that, like, some
Yeah.
agaves like some partial shade. I feel like one thing, this is not blowing smoke, but I feel like one thing I've appreciated about you, and why I've followed you, your podcast and your videos, for anyone in the US who's trying to get into growing agaves, there's really no education. Like, no one's talking about the farming of agave, the agriculture side.
Yeah.
Very few
Everyone's on
people
the
are
spirit
talking about.
side,
Yeah, and that's
like all the.
fine. I mean, like, even if you want
Yeah.
to grow agaves to make spirits, you have to grow them first. And there's
Totally.
very little in terms of um, educational materials out there for people who want to, get into agave
Hmm.
agriculture in the United States. And I feel like that's just passed down generationally. My brother-in-law
Totally.
has an agave farm in La Piedad. He's from the
Yep.
highlands of Jalisco, and that's like generational stuff that's passed down. If you're in the United States and you
Totally.
want to get into this, it's not like, here's how you grow agaves and here's what varietals or species you should
Yeah,
use.
that's the toughest thing. I mean, like I tell people all the time, I'm like, half of my job, like when I sell agave, is actually the education part, because you know you can't even make the sale if you can't educate this person on how to manage it and what they're gonna do with it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's like, if you could get over those two humps, then more people will start to plant agave, right? Because a lot of people like think it's such a tough plant, and it's not to say that it's an easy plant to take care of either. Like I always hear that from people, but it's also not the hardest
Yeah.
plant. You get me? It's somewhere in the middle, and it's definitely something that could be taught. You know, relatively quickly, the basic management of it, right? A
Hmm.
lot of the super detailed stuff, yeah, you do pick up over time, but that's with any crop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I always tell people you just got to get kind of started, because agave is, I always compare it kind of to hemp, it's like it really has 1,000 uses,
Yeah.
I always tell people, I'm like, if USA agave really only focuses on spirits, it's kind of an embarrassment for like me, to be honest, because it's such a wide ranging plant that
Yeah.
to only make alcohol from this, it's like kind of a shame. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because it's like I'm looking at Australia over there, and they're using it, to make energy.
Yeah.
Like they have energy plants that are running on agave, and I'm like, for as much people that love the environment in California, why is nobody talking about an agave run plant here in California, right? A
Yeah.
drought tolerant plant that can be grown on no water, and you utilize that to run an energy plant, and
Yeah.
you don't even have to create biofuels from it. You could directly burn it,
And
and
that agave can be a fire break for you too.
totally, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Right now, I'm sure, I think I'd mentioned it to you, but my home burned down in Altadena, and it's like driving through Altadena, the agaves are chilling, man. Like
That's wild.
it's amazing to see that the whole city's burned down, but there's certain trees and agaves that made it. And I'm just like, I see that proved like all the time in fires, that agave is really just, resistant. And
Hmm.
yeah, I'm trying to do that here, build a fire break with it, because, it's, I almost think it's not, in this new climate, it's not if a fire is going to come to you, it's kind of like when, you know,
Hmm.
um, because it's just so uncontrollable nowadays. But yeah, like that's why I build a lot of stuff out of concrete too. But yeah,
Yeah. I didn't realize you lost your house, man. I'm sorry. I know you had lost a bunch of agaves. Was that trying to get them
all
out of
good.
there?
Yeah, I was trying to, I evacuated like my parents and stuff, and then I was trying to like go back to look for my dog, and then while I was doing that, I was getting a lot of plants out, and until they didn't allow me anymore. So
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of that in Altadena, because it wasn't so cold. I would have like a lot of hybrids and like just
Yeah.
super rare crap that just not as cold tolerant. But
So are you mostly
it's
staying
all
out
good.
at the farm now?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, I got a home in LA now, but it's just like, the farm's more like a home for me, I think, because, I just feel more comfortable over here than in a new home, but,
When you go
um,
back into the city, do you have someone that can help you with the goats, or are you able to
yeah,
leave them for certain periods of
I mean, I
time?
can leave them for a day or two if I need to, but, a lot of the time I like having people here just so that, they could be advancing on whatever I need done. But, yeah, a lot of the times I'm just, going locally, so I won't leave for more than a few hours.
Got it.
Like a lot of the farms I consult on are pretty much in LA County or in, Bakersfield area, which is Kern County. So
Yeah. Okay.
I've been trying to focus a lot of that down here, whereas, in years prior, most of it was in NorCal because I was out there. So um, now I'm trying to just, consolidate more stuff over here. But people don't know how to farm the desert here. That's like what we were getting at. It's like I'm trying to like even bring farmers here. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I'm like, buy some land here. You can grow agave. I'll manage it. Because people don't realize there's like all this agricultural land in LA County that's suitable for it.
mm-hmm.
They just see an expanse of desert, but
Yeah.
um, trying to just little by little teach everyone about that stuff, man, because yeah, it's like in California we're reaching a point where we don't really have the water resources to continue farming the way we do,
Yeah.
so
The water being
it's like
the primary
before I
issue, right?
used to tell people, yeah, it's like before I used to tell people, I'm like, look, man, maybe in the next generation, like my kids or their kids, they're gonna get restricted water and to the point where people are gonna be forced to plant agave and cactus just because they don't have the water.
Mm-hmm.
And actually that's like been sped up over the past 5 to 10 years. Like now it's in my generation. So in my generation now, I think people will get between a 50 to 90% water cut. And I'm dealing with farmers that are in that position now. Like
Mm,
I have nut farmers that, might grow pistachio, might grow almond, might grow different nut trees. And before you were allowed to groundwater pump as much as you wanted.
mm-hmm.
And now they don't allow that. So basically, I had a farm that before, could pump whatever they want. Now they can pump 15% of that. So they're all their trees are dying, and the land they can't even sell it because who wants to buy a dying almond farm? And then their value of everything went to shit because now it's not a valuable land.
Yeah.
So they're in this position where if they don't adapt the farm to agave, cactus, different types of things like this, they're not going to survive another few years. Like they
Do you
have to
think they do
completely
you think they know
change.
that? Do you think they
Oh,
know they have that option? They're
I've
starting to
told
see
them.
that.
I'm
Yeah.
straight up with people, man. I tell them you're fucked. I'm like, I'm looking at the numbers, and you guys got 2, 3 years of leeway. That's it. And I'm like, it. You should assume it's gonna get worse, not better.
Yeah.
So, um, I'm straight up with them because I don't like to see farms go out of business. That's actually the reason I do consulting. It's like I want to keep like there's a lot of great farmers, but they don't. They do stuff their way that they might have been doing for generations, and then they don't want to adapt. So it's like that's how this guy was. He's been a nut farmer for like 30 years.
Right.
So, to tell him you have 2 years to rip everything out and completely shift over to I recommend that he shifted over to cactus and produce, prickly pears and prickly pear wine and spirits and all
Mm-hmm.
types of seed oils. And, I gave him a whole list of shit that he could do with the prickly pears,
Yeah.
and how to grow it, how to manage it, all that. And, he's shifting over because that's his only option.
Yeah.
I mean, like I mentioned, he can't sell. It's invaluable, so he's got say a $10 million mortgage that's now worth 5, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the water makes everything just impossible,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
he's got about 1 year of now he's going to be shifting over, and I think he might become, if he doesn't sell the farm, he might become one of the largest cactus growers like in California and the U.S. And he might become. I mean, I give recommendations for them to be profitable, not just to survive. Like
Yeah.
I hope that he becomes a very profitable cactus farmer, and I mean, we'll see what happens. But the point is, I think that's not going to be a isolated situation. I think that's coming to all of California, man.
Yeah.
I mean, and you in Texas, I think that that's something that's going to start hitting you guys too,
Yeah.
because a lot of the drought situation in Texas also has been, you could say, kind of mediated by groundwater.
Hmm.
So if they cut off the taps, how they're doing here, everything is going to change.
Yep.
Everything.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be able to build the infrastructure fast enough,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The aquifers are getting low around here. I mean, they already have, I would say light restrictions on use right now. It's more like
Yeah.
how often can you water your lawn, irrigation, things like that. But, it's in check, like it's on the radar.
Yeah.
And so you're right. Once that starts to hit the next stage or the stage after that,
I
farming is going to take a
I
big
always say,
hit.
yep. I always say just be proactive for it, right? Like how we're planting agave and cactus and stuff. It's like, you can either wait for it to happen or you can get ahead of the game, right? Because if they pass all those water restrictions, how, they've done here in California, I'm
Yep.
not tripping. I got agave, cactus, yucca, and trees to grow by themselves. I'm looking at these guys like their world is on fire and I'm over here in a peaceful heaven and I'm like, damn, that sucks, but
Yeah.
that's the benefit you gain when you try to install these systems, that you're not going to be at the will of the government.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Because the worst thing you want to be is stuck where the government is the deciding factor of your farm surviving or not. And right now, that's becoming the case with water. You know,
Yep.
so Lake Berryessa here in California, they told the whole county essentially. Now it's not one farmer, right? They tell the whole county, we're going to cut everyone 75%. So
Yeah.
now I'm like trying to find some farms over there to consult for, because I'm like, I don't think these guys realize what that means. Like they wait for it to happen, and then they're like in that pistachio farmer that I was telling you's position, that they're just like really, really low options of what to do because you have to do it fast.
Yeah. You're behind the
So if
eight
you
ball at
have
that
10
point.
years, if you're in Texas and you have 10 years to adapt, do it now, because
Yeah.
by the time in another 10 years, it's not going to be a better climate. It's going to be a worse one, right? So
Yes.
then people in Texas are going to be thinking how they are here. And I don't think it'll be the best situation, for them. But yeah,
So one
just,
option with the agaves that I want to do, and I know you have goats and you feed them um, things that you prune around the farm. I don't know if you've done this
yeah.
yet. Have you ever chopped and fermented the agave leaves?
No, no, but I've grinded them up through like a, what do you call it?
Like a
Like a tree
wood
mulcher.
chipper? Yeah.
Yeah, wood chipper. That's what it is. So I mean, it turns it into a fine kind of like powder for them, and they'll eat that up. The leaves, they kind of only like young leaves, and so the older ones I run through the chipper, and then they can eat it no problem. Like cacti's not like that. They can. I don't have to do anything. I just throw it in there. They eat it.
Oh, we've got one here. Um, they've done the fermented leaves. So the first place I saw that was via Organica. Have you seen them? They're down
Yeah.
in San Miguel. Yeah.
I, I I
So
don't know about them, but I mean the fermented agave is a great idea. It just it's also going to allow you storability of that forage over a long period of time.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
you can also yeah, it's going to be more nutritious for them for sure.
yeah. And with all the mesquite trees that I have on the property, you throw some mesquite pods in there, get some
Oh yeah.
protein.
Mhm.
Um, so, but the goats that you have, you've chipped them up. They said you can add mesquite, yeah. So you've just chipped them up, and even without fermenting them, the goats will go after them just as long as it's chipped up enough for them to eat it.
Yeah. I mean, even if you like what I do, like my management style is like, I used to have workers go through the rows with weed whackers and like try to put all that back into the soil. But
Hmm.
then I'm like, man, every fucking day is like, you got 20 guys, it's like 2, 3, 4 grand. I was like, man, this shit is not gonna be like profitable, you know.
Yeah, that's a
So
lot of work. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I tell people. Like your biggest money that you're gonna lose in agave is gonna be on the labor, actually. So
Hmm.
my whole thing with the goats was let them be my labor. So I take them
Hmm.
through the agave rows, and then I basically put electric netting right up against the pinas. So they're eating
Oh,
right up
interesting.
until the leaves, pretty much like the last 20% of the leaf. So
Hmm.
I direct them exactly where I want to eat, in between the
And
rows
they'll
to drop
eat the
everything
lower
down to a
leaves, the
few
ones you
inches.
want.
Yeah. They'll eat the lower, the top. They'll eat all the leaves that are exposed past that netting, if I leave them long enough. With the goat, it's like the young leaves I was
Hmm.
mentioning. That's like if they're in their pen. But if they're free and you leave them there all day, they'll eat your whole agave. So it's like you have to run them specifically for a few hours in between these rows and be like, okay, now they're finished, right? So it's like I don't want them to drop it down to just fucking dirt. I want a
Yeah.
couple inches of that native to be there to hold, because the roots stay. So if you got 3 inches of a native grass, but you got 2 feet of that root, what happens when you get one little rain?
Yep.
Comes back up. I got food again,
Yep.
and then that ground stays covered. So what I'm trying to do with the agave cactus or trees is like, not everything is covered with natives like the creosote or rabbit brush or whatever.
Hmm.
There's like maybe in your land you'll see little pockets of sand right in between
Yeah.
everything. That's
Hmm.
kind of what I'm trying to plant instead of now a row style. My light's going out. Let me put another one right now. But instead of the row style, I'm trying to plant, wherever there's space that's not covered by the ground and the natives, right? But getting to your point, yeah, I try to eh, feed them all the agave basically that's needing to be managed,
Hmm.
right? So I'm not cutting up any agave. The goats are cutting up all the agave for me. They're managing the whole ecosystem. And then while they're in there in the rows, they're obviously pooping and fertilizing everything, right?
Yep.
So and another benefit is because of their hooves, they're actually aerating the ground for you as well and allowing more water to percolate into the soil.
Hmm.
So they add, probably a half dozen benefits by just putting them in there, and then I have to feed them less. Let me change the battery real quick, but you could talk.
Yeah.
I could hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because we're talking about, not getting behind the eight ball and what are the opportunities in Texas. And I don't have any animals right now. Our
Yeah.
farm is about an hour away from my house, a little over an hour away. So I can't get out there regularly enough to manage any animals myself. We'd have to
Yeah.
have someone who's out there. But that being said,
Totally.
fermenting the agave, chopping and fermenting the agave leaves is something that I see as an opportunity here in Texas for livestock feed.
Oh
When
yeah.
when things really start to get bad and there's nothing for the cattle to eat around here,
I
instead of just giving them crap, there's native plants that they can be eating, that people can be
I
growing
think
that
they
they
can
can
even
eat.
do one better. I think they could have that year-round industry. You know what I mean? Like I tell people, I'm like, they only talk about agave as a forage when this shit is on the ground in Mexico, right? So it's like
Hmm.
now you're seeing all these videos, they're grinding them up and they're giving them to the cows, and people are like, agave is finished, and I'm like, dude, they've been doing that for like thousands of years. It just only is when this shit is on the ground that people go back to their tradition and are like, let's use it for forage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that needs to be year round every year, not
Oh, you
just when
mean
it's on the ground,
because
right?
the agave prices are so low right now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why it's on the ground.
Yeah.
When you only have agave going into spirits, what happens when spirits is down, or when that industry is not doing the best, right? Your
Right.
price is low. So right now, for instance, there's an oversupply of agave tequiliana in Jalisco, so it's 1 to 2 pesos, and tequila is still expensive, but that's what they're able to get for their agave right now, right? But why is it 1 2 pesos? Because you can only sell it to make tequila. If you
Hmm.
if you had a forage industry, if you had an energy production industry, if you had a fiber industry, if you had 10 different industries, that agave price would never hit the floor because it's always moving.
Yeah.
You get me? Right now, it's not moving. That's why it's on the
Right.
ground, because nobody wants it.
It's like a basic
But once again,
principle of investing, right? Diversify.
yeah, like if I was an agave farmer in Mexico, I would be doing what we're talking about. I'd be starting a forage brand of fermented agave and trying to retail that year round to, as a forage for goats, pigs, cows, all of this, because
Mm-hmm.
then I don't have to worry about what the price is, right? I've vertically integrated my company. So as a consultant, I always tell people, like, farmers aren't the richest people in the world. If you look at, companies like the Wonderful Company, maybe they're a little bit like, ethics not the best or whatever, but you know, they grow pomegranates and they sell the pomegranate products, and they distribute most of those products themselves as well. Like they own from the field to the store, putting it in the store, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
why they've become billionaires farming pomegranates in the desert. Like I said, they got some whole water situations and really sketchy stuff. But the point there is that they took a crop that nobody was farming, they brought it to California's desert, and they grew it. And they made a whole bunch of money off of it because they vertically integrated their company. I know lots
Mm-hmm.
of pomegranate farmers that aren't rich at all because they sell a commodity. You get me? So they might sell their pomegranates to a company like Wonderful or whatever to make products. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're selling agave as a commodity, you're likely not going to make money ever except the year when it's good. And
Yeah.
the other years when it's bad kind of take away that good year,
Yeah. That's a
So
lot of
yeah,
time and investment for waiting for one good year.
yeah, that's what I also tell people. I'm like, if you're waiting on year 7 or 8 to find out what product you can make and to see, how you're going to utilize this agave, that's kind of like a screwed situation, you know what I mean? Because what business waits 7, 8 years to see what product they're going to make? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Usually before you get funding, are looking at, this is the product that I'm going to make, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always telling people, like, not only do you need to try to choose, where this agave is going to go, but you yourself need to think about how you're going to utilize it, selling it as a commodity is like a last resort.
Yeah.
Ideally, you should be trying to make stuff from it,
And
because
by the
then you
way,
keep the money in house.
and like even and I eventually want to make an agave spirit, and I don't know if you still.
Yeah,
I know you had talked about wanting to do that. I don't know if you still
yeah,
think you're doing so many other things, but like you can do all these other things in the meantime, right? It's not like either
totally.
or. That's the whole beauty of it, right? Like you
Yeah.
can be making. You're going to prune them every year, anyways, right? You want to
Mhm.
be pruning them. Do something with the leaves. They can be used for things.
Yeah. I mean, my grandpa, in his time, like, I've seen a lot of photographs of him, and I would talk with him. I'd be like, "What type of clothing is this?" And a lot of the clothing back in his time for the farm workers was agave.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the sandals, a lot of the belts, a lot of the what people use for leather or cotton goods now was agave.
Mm-hmm.
It only really changed when synthetic fiber started to dominate the market,
Mm-hmm.
and then synthetic fibers came, into play in Mexico. But when you really look at it, do you want like a supernatural plant like agave on your skin all day, or do you want synthetic petrochemicals on your skin all day? And
Yeah.
so it's a thing also that changed, like, our health. Like using this different clothes, and but the point there is, you could make all types of fibrous products from it. Like, why isn't, you know, for instance, here in LA, you got the fashion district. They're a huge, amount of industry making fashion in LA. Why is no one growing agave here and directly trying to make, garments or different products from it, right? Because they're importing everything. You're telling me if you can grow it in LA for a low amount of inputs, and you drive it 30 minutes into downtown, that's logistic heaven right there, man.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, that's also why I
This is
chose here specifically for that reason as
and
well.
it's education, to go back to that point. It
Hmm.
takes education and people learning about this. And that was my whole thing when I came into this. It was just like there was so little out there. It took I don't even know how many hundreds of hours of research, just, being interested in
Yeah,
agave and trying to understand and like find resources. And you follow this very niche community and you try to learn from each other, and that's all cool. But there are very few resources
yeah,
out there. And I think
it's
people need to learn more about what the opportunities are with agave, other than you grow it, wait 7 to 10 years, then chop it up, cook it, and make a spirit.
totally, yeah. That's why I tell people, like, it's good to research agave online and stuff because, like me, like, uh, I only maybe knew Agave Tequiliana, from Jalisco, but then, because of that oral history, I started, trying to research agave on my own thing, right? Because I studied history at UC Santa Barbara, so I always approach stuff from like, okay, I got to learn all this info about it before I approach it, right? So when I went into agave, before I planted one plant, I was like, well, what can I do with it? And I'm like, okay, I can make, a spirit here, but to me, that wasn't like, you know, like groundbreaking. Like I could go start an agave farm and make tequila in Mexico tomorrow. That wasn't like groundbreaking for me. I was like, oh, I'm making spirits. But, before I even put a plant in the ground, I had probably read 1,000 research papers on people utilizing agave.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And those papers talked about construction uses, like, they talked about how to use the fibers. They talked about, chemical research going into saponins and all types of medical uses. And I looked at different people in Mexico that had gotten patents on different agave syrups that they've gotten into clinical trials for cancer research. And it's like, I started realizing like, okay, there's like 1,000 things I could do. I just got to get it in the ground, right?
Yeah.
So now it's almost like trying to just find these places where I could put it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And a lot of that is, I think I have to create it as well because um, people don't want to risk a lot of that at first, But like, for example, like I've processed a lot of the fiber here and like made like rudimentary sandals, right? I'm not a sandal maker, but I already showed myself, okay, I can make some
The
sandals
proof
with
of
it, right?
concept,
So
it can be
proof of
done.
concept. So I'm like, all right, let me find a sandal maker. You know what I mean? And I found this lady and I'm like, look, if I bring you a bunch of agave, can you make my brand of sandals? And she's like, I got you. Bring me the agave. You know what I mean? And then she's like, I just need it dried and processed. And I'm like, I could do that. No problem.
That's
I'll make a
awesome.
fucking little bunch of racks here where I could dry it and,
Hmm.
I'll process it myself through a grinder. So, you know, that is one way already. I'm like, all right, well, I found a place where I can turn this fiber into a product, right?
Hmm.
And then it's like here, I do a lot of my own construction. So it's like I'm utilizing agave fiber grinded up in concrete, right? So I had read a lot of research that it could potentially strengthen it. And, you know, that research, like some said it would strengthen it, some said it wouldn't. And then, I put it in a slab. And to me, the slab is almost comparable to a concrete slab. It didn't look like it was any stronger, right? But then I read a research paper where they didn't just use cement, right? Like they used a non-binding concrete mix or a non-cement binding concrete mix. So instead of cement, they used another binder. They used regular lime and they basically threw in the agave fiber in there, I think with maybe one other ingredient, but that actually ended up being much more stronger. And
Hmm.
then, when I tested that here, I did the same research thing that they did in that paper. It looks to be much stronger. So I mean, I have more weight on that slab than the other one, and it's doing, it's performing better.
That's very
But
interesting.
that's the type of shit that I'm really excited about, right? Because it's like, I mean, construction industry in America is hundreds of billions of dollars, right? Like,
Yeah.
whereas the whole tequila industry, like, say you got 100% of the market somehow, you were Jesus. It's only 10 billion. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's nothing compared to what the fiber, what the construction, what the energy
Yeah.
industries are in the country. So as where I'm like, where can I put the more agave for my farmers, for my friends? Where can I place the most agave? I don't think it's spirits at
Hmm.
all. You know, I think we need to be hitting up construction companies, civil engineering departments, and universities, and working with them and showing them, yo, this is a stronger you know material. How can we utilize this?
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing, working with construction companies to try to, okay, how can we maybe integrate this into some of your projects, right?
Yeah.
So, I told a constructor straight up, I said, look, I want to see if this could be used kind of like hempcrete in insulation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told him, I'll give you agave fiber for free, and I'll even help you mix it and do the wall.
Mm-hmm.
All I want to prove is the proof of concept. You get me? Because if I could prove that this shit has a great R value for
Mm-hmm.
constructors, we're gonna be rich. I mean,
Yeah.
you're gonna need all the agave that exists.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You need just one of those groundbreaking things for agave in the U.S. for it to take off like crazy. And spirits. I mean, I don't know if that's gonna be it for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I go back to, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, right? Like, you can use
Totally.
so much from the plant. If you want to make spirits, that's awesome. And a lot of people want to do
Hmm.
that. I want to do that. That's great. But like you said, you don't have to be limited in your vision what you
Oh,
can do with the plant.
you could do
Um,
everything.
and
Yeah.
once those industries start to build up, they're immediately going to be trying to figure out, where are the agave farms, right? Where do I get agave
Yeah.
from? Where in
Yeah.
Texas, where in California do I get an agave? I can't just go down to the, Home Depot nursery to get all the agaves to make this concrete. They're going to want farms. They're going to want to source the
Hmm.
material.
Yeah, because they're gonna want affordable rates and stuff. So, but I think what you said, they're not having, like trying to diversify the way that you generate money from your agave farm is gonna be where it's at. It's like you could do niche spirits of like 100 different agave species, and you have that on the side, and you can be selling into construction firms, and you can be selling to energy plants, and you can do a little of everything. Like I always tell people, I'm like, they're like, oh, what are you gonna do with your agave, Steve? And I'm like, I don't care, dude. Whoever has the highest bid, you know. At the end of the day, it's like whatever allows you to profit as a farmer, that continue. That's gonna be explored,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, don't limit yourself at all. Try to see where it could go in multiple ways, for sure.
I had a question about totally changing subjects. I don't
What's
know
up?
how long you want to go tonight, but I had a question
Oh,
about,
good.
while we're still here, on seeds. So I had
Yeah.
such a hard time getting seeds going early on. I probably tried 100 different seeds before I had any germinate. The big
Yeah.
the big change for me was using a heating pad, because I was
Hmm.
doing this all indoors in my house. So keeping the soil warm enough and moist enough,
Yep.
obviously, that they germinated. So I've seen some of your videos. I don't know if you germinate outside, if you are able to germinate when you have them
In
outdoor, or
in
you do
spring
it indoors,
and
or
summer, yeah.
yeah.
But right now and in fall, I always bring them indoors. Yeah, because of the
Okay.
same thing, the cold. So I'll put them on heating pads as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's that soil
You really got to
temperature, I
try to
guess.
keep them above 60, 70. Yeah. Like if they drop into the 40s, 30s, then they're gonna like just not come out. Or if they were coming out, they're just gonna die right there.
Yeah.
So you do kind of have to try to maintain that soil temperature pretty high. But um, if you start them in spring and summer, then you should have enough time before that cold temperature sets in. It's
Hmm.
just really in the cold months where I've seen I kind of have to use the heating pad. Um, but yeah, it's a tough one, the seeds. I think um, most people struggle with seed propagation of agave like forever.
Yeah.
Like they never get it. People always ask me like, oh, why they don't start agave from seed in Mexico as much. And I'm like, have you ever started agave from seed? It's not easy.
Man, it's hit or miss,
It's
man.
like, yeah,
I was thinking at first, I was like, I'm not cut out for this.
straight up, yeah. But I tell people, I'm like, it's not that they don't want, it's that they can't.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they don't want to buy the seed and have these seeds die and go through that learning process. You know what I mean? But if they did, that's where the end game is, right? That
Yeah.
you learn how to grow seeds, and now you're producing extremely affordable agave for your farm, you know?
I've been
So at
using
the end of the day, it's worth it, man.
I've been
Oh,
using
that's
these
nice.
guys,
Yeah.
and what I like about that, they're just the little discs,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. They're like,
They're like,
well, they're good for when you want
yeah,
to have them separated too,
yes.
you know?
So they're
Yeah.
each individual little disc, and obviously once they soak up the moisture, um, and what I like about this is they will germinate at different times, right? And I've
Hmm.
noticed that if you have them under a humidity dome, once they start popping, you got to get them out of
Yep.
there. You got to get them fresh air.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the problem
They'll
I was
rot out
having
on
is
you.
like, yeah,
They'll rot
like
out on you. Yeah.
so I was having some that were germinating, they're popping up and they're ready to get out.
Hmm.
And if I had like one bed of soil, it was you know, all or nothing. I could take the dome off and let the one that
Yeah.
germinated survive, or I'd leave the dome on and then that one dies and wait for more to germinate. So these, what I like about the
Yep.
disc is you just pull it out, put it somewhere else, and that the sleeve around the coca, whatever you call it, coconut coir,
Yep.
it's biodegradable. So you could just kind of put it down into the soil once it's ready to go and leave the dome on to wait for the others to germinate on their own time. So you just kind of take them out one by
Yep.
one.
Yeah. I have like little different stations for it, for the same reason that as soon as they pop, you don't want them to be with the rest of them. But the only way, sometimes like I get over that is if I'm planting all in soil and they're exposed to air, you know.
Mm.
So, but once again, I can only do that in 2 seasons, so I'm limited there. Most of the time I am doing them with dome houses and stuff, but
I've not
yeah.
I have not had a single one germinate in open air, but
It's tough
but
for sure.
I refused to throw them away. So when if it doesn't happen, like a couple months have gone by or something,
Yeah.
I'll take them out to the farm and I'll spread them around. I'm like, I'm not throwing it away. Who knows?
Well,
Maybe.
what I tell people too, a lot of the times when they have tough times popping them, it's like you can just put them like on paper towels and just like, you know, s- finally mist them as well until they pop,
Mm,
and then you can place them in soil with like tweezers and stuff.
yeah,
But once
did a
again, it takes a
couple.
little bit of learning. So, I mean, but for me, I found that way a little bit easier actually sometimes. Like, I'll start a whole bunch of seeds on a napkin and then, they're uh, able to kind of just have like, an easy time sprouting. But um, sometimes in the soil, they kind of get stuck, but uh, yeah. What do you call it? I was going to ask you, have you planted any, varieties of agave that are Texan,
So that's what I'm trying to focus on. And, I think there will always be a debate about like what is really native, what's become
Yeah.
domesticated and all that. But yeah, I try to do as much research as I can. And Texas A&M is really good on the agricultural side here in Texas. So they've got some good research
Nice.
on native Texas plants. So
Yeah.
what I've been trying to focus on is agaves that, from what I can tell, are native or arguably native to
Yeah.
Texas, because if they're native here, they're native here for a reason. And so
Totally.
agave Americana, I mean, you can't drive into any neighborhood in San Antonio without seeing an agave Americana. They're all over. So we've got
Yeah.
those. We've got some agave Harvardiana. Those are really big in
Great
the
one. Yeah.
like real West Texas. They're usually higher elevation, but
Yeah. They're
they're
usually like in Big Bend, I think, area.
yeah, exactly. So I think, closer to the sun, they should do fine with the sun exposure out on our farm, and they're also
Yeah.
cold hardier. So they've done all right. The one that I've
Yeah.
had the most success with on the farm, actually, in terms of both not being eaten by all the deer and making it through the
Yeah.
winter and the summer, all extremes of weather, has been the Salmiana. We
Yeah. It's a
have
good one.
we have the Salmiana, I don't know, they call it the Furrow, the
Hmm.
Ferox
Yeah.
varietal here.
Paradox.
That,
Well, I
yeah,
call
that's
it
really big.
paradox. But yeah, people got different pronunciations on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good
That's
variety.
another.
Yeah.
I love it. It has been a stud on our farm, and
That's
I
good
think
to
they're
hear.
beautiful
Yeah.
agaves.
Because I mean, I I've tested them here, and like it's gotten down to 14, and they're still performing for me. So it's nice to hear that in Texas they're doing well too. You know,
Yeah.
um, I was gonna recommend you can maybe look up Agave Crescenta, because that agave also is a fairly large agave that's native to Texas, I believe. So
Yeah,
um,
I've seen that. I've seen that recently too, and I need to do some more research on that. It's interesting you say
mhm.
that. Is that a hybrid or
No, it's a native wild plant.
okay? Yeah,
There's
I'll check it out.
yeah, they get fairly large. I've seen them in the wild, in like really tough environments, and like same thing, like they'll be covered in snow, and they have like a really good cold tolerance, wind tolerance, elevation. But they get big.
Hmm.
That's the one thing too why I want to get some Havardianas or more Havardianas and more Crescenta. It's like, a lot of these Texas agaves are like the biggest USA agave types, you know?
Hmm.
So it's like, I mean, Howardiana is going to be like 10 times the size of like a mini agave times the Cibora Spina, It's
Mm.
like, so when I'm looking at USA varieties, the the best ones, some of them are actually from Texas. Like
Yeah.
in Arizona and these places, they're small agave,
Have you
they're
looked at
very
the
hardy as well. But
Have you looked at the Neo Mexicana? I think we talked about that before,
yeah,
right?
Neo
I think those are
Mexicana is one
beautiful.
that really, yeah, I just love the look on them. Like I think
Yeah.
it's one of the coolest Paris species, and it's if not the most cold tolerant agave, it's up there. Um, like I haven't seen any agave be classified under -20 Fahrenheit.
Hmm.
But at that -20 Fahrenheit is Neo Mexicana and Utaensis. So I'm over here looking at like, okay, well, Utaensis, unless it's some of these, cultivars that are like Cubensis or subspecies Utaensis, they're not very large. I mean, you might only get a 2-3 foot, whereas with the Neo Mexicana, you might get a 3 or 4 foot
Hmm.
plant, and then they're extremely like hardy plants. It's ridiculous. Like I just have had a hard time finding seed for them and the
Hmm.
plant in general.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why like people ask me for them, but I'm like, I don't want to sell them, man, because yeah, it was hard to find them in the first place. And once I get some seed from them, it's gonna be over. I can get Neo Mexicana to everyone. So
Yeah.
I'm just
Well,
trying not to rush it.
I don't
You
have
know?
any yet, but I plan to, and they pup, right?
Yeah,
Do you know?
yeah,
Uh,
they do. And they give lots of seed too, man. I mean, I've gone well, I split a agave Neo Mexicana bloom with someone, and then I think we collected like 15, maybe 18,000 seeds
wow.
off just one
Oh wow.
agave. Yeah. I mean, that's what
So
I'm
where are
saying.
all of
Once you
those?
have one pod, what's up?
Where are all of
Oh,
those?
all those. I'm still planting a bunch of them out, and then they're all like seedlings. I probably got like 2,000 of them, little babies, but
Oh man.
they're like maybe only an inch and a half tall. And then
Hmm.
I got some different Neo Mexicanas in one gal that I planted out, and those are probably like around a 5 gal stage now.
Hmm.
So that's the other thing too with the Neo Mexicanas or Utaensis or these native species. I could plant them out at like quart or 1 gal size because I know they're not going to die.
Hmm.
So when I'm bringing in, yeah, like Salmiana or bigger non-native plants here, I have to try to give them a a bigger edge. Whereas the natives, you could just throw them into the fire. They're like whatever, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like I've had some pups that are like 3-4 inches of Neo Mexicana, and I'll just take it out. It has no roots, and I'll plant it. Nah, I check up on it like a couple months later, and it's doing well, growing fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
uh, that's what we were getting to in the early part of this. It's like, how much do you want to work as a farmer?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like there might be other species that you might like more, but you want to put the ones that are going to give you the least uh, you know work to do. You
Hmm.
know, and Neo Mexicana is definitely a winner agave. I think that it's probably going to be the one that I try to recommend to a lot of people around the US, because it's like there's so much snow everywhere. As soon as you leave the coast of the US anywhere, like whether it's the south or east or west, it just gets really cold. So
It's
I'm trying to
tough
just
here.
introduce that
I,
to a lot of people.
I'm interested in what your temperature extremes are, because here we definitely
Yeah.
have several weeks of 110, and then like last month we had down in the teens. And I lost some young Americana that we were talking about, that I planted too young. I planted them too young. They got sunburned. I couldn't keep up with
Yeah, that's the
them.
other. You gotta acclimate them.
Yeah, and then heading into the freeze, they were already so weak they just got wrecked. Um,
Yep.
but what are your swings like out there in terms of summer versus winter?
I mean, in winter, like right now, our lows were 14 Fahrenheit. And then, we've had, I mean, out of the whole winter, we've probably had, 30 to 40% of that with daily nighttime lower than 25.
Hmm.
So right now, it'll probably get to like 29 tonight. So periodically throughout winter, most of the agave are undergoing temperatures that kill the majority of the agave. So
Hmm.
like under 30, the majority of agave are going to suffer, like just species
Hmm.
wise. And under 25 is like the vast majority.
Hmm.
So there's like maybe 10 to 15% that is in that small pocket that I'm looking at. Because I can grow everything in a greenhouse,
Hmm.
but I mean, I want to
That's not
be
the
able to
goal.
have a farm that, yeah, that's not the goal. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do that more for hybridization stuff just to have fun. Like I got a lot of non-cold hardies in greenhouses just for genetics, to be honest. It's like, okay, I can hybridize them, but some of those, like, they're just being completely destroyed out in nature. So like a lot of the showy that I have in greenhouses, it's like I don't even want to make spirits from it. Like I just want to give it to people that are in restoration projects or something, because there's not very much of it left in the wild. So I feel like kind of like guilty making spirits from something that might be endangered in my lifetime,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
Um, but just you know, I keep that in the greenhouse, even though I know I'm not going to farm it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I also have showy hybrids here that I'm farming, right? So I can combine a native California species with something that's more cold hardy or something that's, from Texas or whatever,
Hmm.
and get that showy genetics to still be present. You get me? So while I might not use some of these agaves like their main, like trying to grow thousands of them, I plan
Hmm.
on making, cultivars with them that still are able to take the temperature swings. And,
Yeah.
that's the cold, but it's like on the summer, it can go, we reached 120 Fahrenheit here, and it gets, over 110 probably for over a month or a month and a half. So,
Yeah.
and
It's
then
tough.
throughout the year, you have pretty much every other day anywhere from 20 to 50-mile an hour wind. Like we're at, pretty high elevation. So it's just, and we're in a valley
Yeah.
surrounded by mountains. So we get the wind pickup and come through here all the time. So, I mean, these agaves are just like in the worst,
Yeah.
like, because I'm from Jalisco. I'm like, it's heaven over there compared to what I got them in,
Yeah.
you know?
That's where the
Here
trees
it's,
can help you out. I guess you got the trees oriented in
yeah,
a way to kind of help break up some
I'm
of that wind.
trying. I'm trying to plan a couple windbreaks and stuff like that. But, I also am like, man, you know, I got, like I mentioned, like these native varieties like Neo Mexicana and, native to the
Hmm.
US, at least, not
Hmm.
California, but it's like all these varieties like the Paris and, the Crisanta and the Havardianas. Like, I don't have to do anything. Like, they just take the wind. You know what I mean? So I'm also like, yeah, I can plant a windrow, but do I really want to, spend money on that? I'm like, I should just plant better species. Like, but yeah, it's a tough temperature swing for sure.
So
I think
in
that
the in the
yeah,
summer
that's
when it
going to be a lot of the country though.
yeah, 100%. And when you're dealing with temperatures like that, I know you do primarily dry farming. I mean, you don't water
Yeah,
stuff a lot, but when you get
no.
stretches like that, do you water them at all?
Try not to. Yeah. I mean, in the summer when it's like 120, what I try to do is nighttime waterings if I see that, like, it hasn't rained much, because we'll get monsoon rains, which
Okay.
basically can, throw a bunch of water all at once in the summer, and that water stays in the
Mm,
soil. So I don't want to
hmm.
water them and start to rot them, because now it's like the desert soil. It's I would say a poor base
Hmm.
soil, but it has all the ingredients for an amazing soil, because no water leaves. The native soil here, if you don't disturb it, like as soon as the water goes into it, it's there forever. Which means though that I can't be watering on top of that, right?
Yeah.
So if we get monsoons, I don't do anything on the watering side. If we get no monsoons like this year, then I'm going to water them during the night,
Hmm.
because that's when their stomata's open and it's going to be able to absorb a lot of that
Yeah.
water. And then by the time it's daytime, their roots have uptaken that, and it's not sitting on them that can actually cook them. So
Yeah.
sometimes people in the day will try to water. It's like 110, 120. But if you do that, you can actually boil your cactus and agave. So
Mm.
it, you can severely burn them. Yeah.
Wow.
And in the winter, a lot of the times, the non-cold hardies, I'm having to tarp them. I'm having to put them in greenhouses, and then, you know, I just think it's too laborious, to be honest with you. Like I could do it, but I don't think a farm this farm, I think of it as an experiment. But what I've learned here is going to turn into 1,000-acre farm. You get me? So I don't want to scale something that takes work, because you're saying, oh, 15 minutes now, 20 minutes now, but times 1,000,
Yeah.
now it's a fucking issue, right? So what I'm trying to do here is like, okay, I figured out maybe these few dozen agave, these few dozen cactus species, these few dozen, tree species that could be dry farmed, and take these extremes, and then that's what I'm going to double down on. Now I can scale to 1,000 acres, because I know exactly how to do it, right?
Yeah.
Without labor, and without water, without fertilizers, without any inputs, to be honest with you, besides me and like a worker or two.
Hmm.
And that, I think is going to allow me to be at a good margin for what I'm making on my agave. And, I think, yeah, people are going to have to definitely try to do something like that, because if you're wasting too much inputs on your agave, it's like we're already in California, or you in Texas, we're in the United States. I mean, it's much more expensive to run an agave company here than in Mexico, and you have to find places to be more efficient without sacrificing quality.
Yeah.
You get me? And that is going to be tougher for people, you know what I mean? Because, for instance, they might try the labor, the heavy fertilizers, the heavy water, and when they have a high price spirit that they're trying to sell, it's not going to sell, you
Hmm.
know? So, uh, yeah, it could be dangerous there.
Well, one thing we've talked about that I think will help, with with the summer intensity or really any of the weather extremes is being strategic about establishing the plants. And that was one
Yeah.
thing I really screwed up early. I mean, that was a big, this goes back to not having a lot of guidance early on, and I just,
You got to
for me getting into
acclimate them
it,
slowly,
yeah.
Like
And
when I bring trees to the farm straight from the greenhouse or from a nursery or from anywhere that's not here that's extreme, I always put them under trees, so where they're getting some sun but not a lot for a few weeks.
hmm.
That way they get used to the wind, they get used to the climate without being in, the direct.
Hmm.
And then after maybe a month or two, I'll plant them.
Hmm.
So it's like acclimatization is something definitely really, really important to agave. Even, you don't want to put them out there before they're needed. Yeah.
But this is the absence of. I mean, you need to put together some materials, man. You could sell you could sell some materials. This is the absence of
Yeah.
like agave, just sort of within the institutional knowledge of the United States agricultural field. There's a complete
Hmm.
absence of agave farming knowledge, and so everything that's out there is really just like home gardeners,
Yep.
and
Yep.
um, and when you read a lot of the literature in the U.S., and I won't even call it literature. It's just like guides or web
Yeah,
pages
it's
or
what
whatever's
people
out there.
got
It's
put
like,
together.
yeah, it's like agaves love sun, agaves love
Hmm.
the heat, agaves don't like to be watered. And okay, I mean, yeah, there's succulents. That's generally true, but like I'm just out here like an asshole, like just throwing agaves in the ground in
But
110-degree sun. They're
yeah,
getting rocked and
a lot of the
sunburnt
time
and
it's just they don't think that there's multiple agave species.
hmm
You know what I mean? Like they assume that every agave is the same, and that's definitely not the case. You know what I mean? Some agave you can do that. Like if you get a Utahensis, you could, dude, you could throw it in. It's a 120-day and plant it. Nothing will happen. But most agave, yeah, they're gonna suffer a bit. So um,
and
yeah, that
especially
education is important. Like that's why I'm trying to work with researchers, not only in California. It's like I'm talking to PhDs in different countries that are working on agave to try to come to a global education consensus of like how can we put this knowledge into farmers' hands. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Because I don't only think we should be planting agave in California and Texas. I think we should be planting it around the world. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like the problems you and me are talking about, it happens
yeah,
everywhere. Like in Guatemala, they don't have, I'm from Guatemala too. They don't have consistent rain anymore. People are starting to do what we did here 50 years ago, which is put in wells. And how we're talking about that's going to lead them to the aquifer destruction, right? So the world is completely changing, and it's going to be something that can help everyone. You know what I
mhm,
mean? Like, I've been talking to cactus farmers in Europe that are starting up, and I'm trying to get them on agave, man. I'm like, look, like you guys got agave growing naturally, agave americana all over a few European states that are touching the Mediterranean, right? So like Italy, Greece, Spain, Portugal, all these places have like agave americana, how Texas and Cali do, where it's just everywhere.
mhm,
And I'm like, go get those plants and start an agave industry there, because this guy I was consulting with, it's like they just have an insane amount of plague on their wine. There's a wine glut. The same thing I'm consulting for California vineyards, they're dealing with in Italy. That it's a really tough market right now. And they're having to rip out vines and they don't know what to plant. And I'm like, go for agave, man. Like if you don't have, the resources that you need anymore.
yeah,
Um and I think it's something that's gonna go around the world, and they're each going to do their own little thing. Like if Italy grows agave, they're one of the fashion centers of the world. They could easily start producing, clothes out of it that's really high quality. Um, that's going on in Africa right now.
you
Like they're
better get your
producing some
trademark on
solid
your
agave.
flip-flops.
Yeah.
You
Well,
better
I call them
trademark that.
huaraches. That's the huaraches from Mexico, the Mexican sandals. That's what
No,
I styled it on.
I'll
They're
talk to my
basically
wife.
like sandals, but they just have the front covered up. So I mean, you
Oh,
can run in
okay,
them,
yeah,
like yeah, you can do all types of shit you couldn't do in flip flops in them, and they're legit, man. But yeah, definitely, I'm gonna start to work on that more. It's just I gotta get more agave, man. That's the thing. It's like my farm. I want it to be profitable from day one. It's maybe not making a lot of money, but it's not losing any money, which is for farming, very tough.
yep.
So from the beginning, I was like, all right, I want to just uh, try to make this profitable, and I just most of my profitability on this farm comes from agave sales. So it's like I'm fighting
Yeah,
myself. You know what I mean? I want to
yeah.
plan all that agave out, but then somebody comes and is like, "Yo, Steve, I need 10,000 agave," and I'm like, "Boom, there you go." Like that just happened to me this month. I'm like, okay, well, my home burned down. I need to make some more money. I
Yeah.
took the 30,000 40,000 agave that I was gonna plant this year, and I just sold it
Wow.
because that allowed me to sustain myself. But what does that prove for me? Dude, I did more in January this month than I did in 6 7 months last year.
Wow.
I'm proving to myself that agave can be more productive, right? If I had the
hmm
plants. So over here, I planted 100,000 seed last year. I sold a lot of those seedlings this year, and I'm like, nah, this spring I'm going 500K. I'm gonna put 500K in the seeds in the ground or in propagation.
hmm
Why? I want to have more agave than I can sell and more agave than I can plant.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now it's turned into a point where I'm competing with myself. I want to plant these agaves out, and then, I also want to maintain profitability, so I end up selling them.
Yep.
So I probably only keep 10% of what I sell, and that's, what I have on my farm. And once it hits the ground, that's it. No more selling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if it gets planted, I'm not going to go unplant it.
Yeah.
But
But you
uh,
can make that assessment as you go, right? Like if the price is not
yeah,
right, you just put it in the ground.
like I tell people, the growing and selling agave plants is something that, I didn't want to, how I told you, wait till year 7 to become profitable. I was like, look, if I'm spending 1,000 and I grow 100 agave plants and split the 1,000,
Hmm.
that's a cool year, So that might have been like probably how my first year was or whatever. And now whatever sales I make, I take that money and directly throw it back into the
Hmm.
farm. You get me? So it's like eventually I'll reach my level that I want, but my goal is from year 1 or whatever to be profitable so that still in existence, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you wait till year 7 to try to make some money, it might not work out for you. I wasn't gonna wait to that. I'm like, let's start making money now so that by year 7 I have this agave nursery popping, and then shit, I might not even want to make spirits if it's not profitable enough. And that's actually starting to be the case actually. Like I'll give you an example. I reached out to this distiller and I told him, look, I got some agave. I would like to see what you could quote me as a purchase on this. And they were around, I think $3 a pound for what they wanted to pay me, right? So I'm like, oh, over here, I'm like, okay, well, this pina out of this mature agave, that's a 6-year-old agave, I might be getting, it was an agave Moriana, so I was getting 30, 40 pound pinas.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, that's around $120, $140, whatever, per agave that I get at maturity, right? And I'm like, that's cool. I got a buyer, whatever. But then those agaves, I have them as 5 gals, and I'm selling them for $30, and that's a 1-year plant.
Hmm.
Now, you get me? If I can sell 6 1-year plants and I make the same money that I would have, from that plant of maturity, it's gotten to the point where I make more money on the plants than I ever would from selling my agave as a commodity. So the only thing that I think, will allow me to make spirits now is actually creating my own brand, because what they're paying me as a commodity is not what,
Yeah.
you know, I could sell the plant for probably, you know, probably 5 to 10 times more in value, you know? So that's the other thing. I'm like, well, I don't know if we're going to be making spirits if these plants are able to be sold into landscaping at these prices everywhere, because,
Yeah. I'll just
you know, um,
let it bloom,
yeah,
take the
just,
seeds and have,
yeah.
yeah.
And that's the
But
other thing. I'm making a bunch of money off the seeds, man. I sold probably over 100,000 agave seeds this year. And it's like, you know, if you get, I'll give you the example. One agave gives you, say, 20,000 seeds. Same example. Let's double what you got from your agave. Let's say it's a tequiliana and you get 100 pounder. They're paying at $3 a pound, $300 a plant. Now you take those 20,000 seeds and you sell them at 10 cents each. That's 2K off that one agave,
mhm.
and make 5 times selling it as a commodity. So, the spirits is not the only way to make money with agave. I always tell people that. But, at the same time, I know that if I made a niche spirit brand that was all these diverse agaves and diverse flavors that nobody has, I could sell it for a really good price and that would make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But
You'd
that's
vertically
not going to
integrate it
happen
though.
with
You'd be
someone
doing it
new.
yourself.
Yeah. I've talked with people about it, because it's like I calculate probably here in Lancaster, which is a cheaper place to build in LA County, a distillery costing me like probably a mil or two, like probably around that 1.5 mark. That same distillery in LA will be $5-6 million, and probably triple the time in permitting. But the point being, if I get 20, 30 people together and we each pitch in, 30, 40 grand, that's something feasible where we could have a co-op distillery and each of us have a vertically integrated agave company. You get me?
Hmm.
We could, everybody produces whatever they want, whatever species, take your time, whatever. But when they're ready, you have your, your piece of the distillery that's your use,
Mm-hmm.
So say everybody has, for instance, 5%. So you always will have 5% of that capacity of the distillery for your brand. And if you're not making spirits, you can lease that, that use to another brand or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it might be something that is very valuable vertically integrating through a co-op, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that might be how small farmers can actually sell their spirits, make the profit, and not sell it as a commodity. But not everyone's going to have $2 million. Let's just set up this
Yeah.
distillery. So, but people can finance, or they might have 30, 40 grand, and it doesn't have to be that split. People might be buying a 1% use or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal to be kind of that co-op model, because I mean, I could probably do it, but I don't want to blow 2 mil on that myself. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's a lot of money, man. So
That's a
if
big
I
bet.
could get a lot of people to come in with me, then yeah, it becomes less of a risk. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to work on something like that to get here in California. In Texas, you might want to explore that as well, just because that way you can get people more. What do you say? Like they're confident that there's going to be a place for their agave. You get me? Like I
Yeah.
feel like right now a lot of people are like, what happens if I grow it and there's no place for it? Which is going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen to a lot of people. That's why I say, like, you got 7 years, 5 years, some cases 10, 15. Get started on year one making these contacts of
Yeah.
where to place it, right? Or it might take you even 3 years to build a distillery. You don't want to
Yeah.
be doing that year
Right.
7. Do that right now. And I'm actively trying to work on that with some farmers, because if not, we're going to be screwed.
And to
I
beat a
mean,
dead horse, we've said a
yeah,
million times, for
yeah,
the
I
seven
mean,
years, you can be making money in the interim. There are other uses.
yeah,
You can be doing
totally.
things right now to make money.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, here I'll give the example. We have some industrial agave farmers coming into California. People that have tens of thousands of acres planted, not of agave, but that's their portfolio, right? Um, and some of them are getting up to 500, and soon will be at the 1,000 acre mark.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you grow the same species as an industrial agave farmer and you go to sell it as a commodity, right?
Yeah.
So, like I always tell people, you're not going to be able to differentiate yourself. You're screwed, because you're going to have this industrial guy being able to sell at $1 or $2 a pound, and then you're trying to charge 3 or 4. You're not even in the question here. You get me?
Yeah.
But now, for instance, they're focusing on Tequiliana and Espadín. Now, if it's like you, where you got Neo Mexicana and you got Americana, you got some Crescenta or some Salmiana, the stuff they don't have, now you can get a good price for it, because as a commodity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people don't have it. It's all supply and demand at the end of the day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like, if there's an oversupply of this agave, and you have that, that's not a good position to be in. That's why I always tell people, I'm like, you have to explore the shit that no one is messing with.
Yeah.
How you're messing with these agaves, like I think that's exciting, because those that brings new potential of everything, right? New types of spirits that can be made, new types of fibers that go into the fiber production,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know the energy potential of a lot of these as well. It's like, they're using Tequiliana in that energy plant in Australia. Dude, I mean, some of these Americanas,
I know.
I
Well, I
mean,
think about that all the time. I mean, think about it. I'm in Texas, oil capital, so
yeah, man,
to be able to,
you
all
can,
these energy companies that are here, to be able to bring a proof of concept to them and say, you want to diversify?
I'll tell
I've got something for
you
you.
what, I mean, I already know that Shell is working with different farmers. I won't mention who they are, because I'm not sure if they want me to, but Shell, the oil company, is working with different farmers already to make agave biofuels.
Mm.
And where's Shell from?
Yep.
Right? So you should be hopping on that as well. They're in different countries, very far away. Texans should be trying to work on the biofuels with Texan petrochemical
No,
companies,
there
and trying to figure
quite a
out,
few right here in San
how
Antonio. I
can
mean,
we,
Valero is a big
yeah,
one.
tell them, look, like how can we, you guys are trying to diversify your portfolios, trying to get away a little bit from this to diversify. How can we maybe trying to integrate this into your energy portfolio. You get me?
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are conversations we need to start having, and I think that when we start getting this agave in the ground is the only chance they're going to give us, because just talking about it isn't going to do shit. You need to like be able to like, yo, I'll bring the agave to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, I just need you to like fucking be down to attempt this.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I already know a lot of biofuel researchers in Mexico and Brazil that have successfully made a ton of biofuels that are very efficient. So it's like, if really you can do that in America, it would be very significant,
Yeah.
and I think you got a better opportunity for that than people in California or whatever, because Texas is the center of petroleum,
Yeah.
for me, in America at least, and I know they have a lot of potential that they could use agave for, right?
Yeah.
Like
Well,
I
it's very
mentioned, a
much
lot
on
of
my mind.
native Texan agaves there, man. Like you have a lot you can explore there for sure. Um, diesel is used in everything, right? It's like, um, and I always tell people, I'm like, I used to have a homie who had a little diesel GTI, like one of those little cars, and this guy would go to like McDonald's and random places to pick up their oils, and he adapted his diesel
I've heard
engine a
of
little
people
bit to
doing
run off
that.
it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I mean, why is no one doing this for agave? You know what I mean? It takes one experiment to realize this potential.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's once again why we, you, me, I think it's a good idea to start to reach out to University of Texas, University of California. How can we start putting on paper what this can do?
Mm-hmm.
Because, they have the funding potentially to do the experiments that we could have in place and proven by the time we have that agave,
Yeah.
So once again, this is going to take a couple years to research, a couple years to develop, and we want to be ahead of the game so that when it's ready, you're like, Shell, here's 100 acres of my agave,
Yeah.
Um, it's going to get real interesting there for sure.
I agree.
That's one area I'm exploring a lot too, and yeah, even like you mentioned, it's like they're gonna just need a crazy amount of it. It's like a lot of people, in agave see other agave farmers as a lot of competition, But I'm always like, how I just told you, I sold out of a lot of agave. I'm hitting up my other agave farmer friends. I'm like, yo, everything you got, like,
Yeah.
bring it. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm gonna resell it. I don't
Well,
care. I'll make money on
and
that. You know?
I 100% agree. I mean, it's not like, if we think about it correctly, the pie is too big for
It's
anyone,
huge. Yeah.
and the more we work together to raise awareness and education, the pie just gets bigger. And that's
Yeah.
sort of the epitome of a high, rising tide lifts all boats.
Comes down again to those spirits, it's like, because everyone's trying to make spirits, it's like they're all selling the same product. So sometimes they get a little competitive, but I don't know. I think there's, market for everyone if you're a good enough spirit and you're high
Hmm.
quality, regardless of where you are. You can make agave spirit in fucking Antarctica or whatever. And if you make good quality, people buy it. I
Yeah.
mean, um, yeah. So I just think, all that people need to think about for sure. What do you what do you call it or what got you into growing agave at first, like you know why did you even want to start this agave farm?
My wife is from Guadalajara, and
Nice.
for me, it was a spirits route first. Realizing
Yeah.
that tequila was more than just what I did in college. I think that's a story for a lot of people. Realizing that
Hmm.
agave spirits, that there's a whole different world there, and once one of our first dates that we went on when I visited her and met her family, she took me to tequila, and just
Hmm.
touring and seeing, and I don't know, my eye was open on that, and I would say that was like an early seed that was planted for me. I really got interested in agave spirits, and
Yeah.
we kind of moved around a little bit. We moved to Texas, and I started to think about it, and I was like, well, I mean, why couldn't you grow agaves in Texas? And I also love
Totally.
history,
Hmm.
and I'm like, okay, Texas was Mexico, Mexico was Texas. Like
Yeah,
people were moving in and out. The Spanish were here. Like these technologies, these agriculture
yeah.
traditions, like all of
Interesting
this.
you bring that up because there was actually a pre-denomination of tequila. There was actually a distillery in Texas making tequila.
Hmm,
It's real weird. Yeah.
I never knew
Um,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just kind of went down that rabbit hole, um, and then I got into Texas history. I'm like, I'm digging as much as I can, trying to, and there's
Totally.
like, again, there's kind of a limited universe of stuff out there, and just like, what's the history of agave in Texas? But
Hmm.
uh, if you can find those small uh, communities of people looking into that, and there are archaeologists finding earthen ovens all over
It's
Texas, and
it's how you were saying UT. You know, it's University of Texas. Like a lot of these archaeological studies, a lot of these historical studies. They're where I've been getting good luck. You know, because it's
yeah,
like I wanted to research, for instance, roasting pits, right? And in Mexico, they're conical, you know, and I was having bad experience with it here because it gets so hot. So I was like, man, I mean, in this cool climate, in Oaxaca, the roast pit works a little bit better because it's a cool climate. I was like, this shit's not working for me. But then I read a paper out of University of Nevada, or I think it was Arizona, on Utensis roast pits, and I found out they made them bowl shaped, and I'm like, oh shit, let me try this. I made one bowl shaped, no issues at all. And I'm like, it makes
interesting.
sense that the people making roast here would have a better roast pit for style for me because I'm in USA, right?
Yeah,
It's like people trying to copy, for instance, a Oaxacan style instead of a Nevada style.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And the same thing I'm sure is going on in Texas, where as soon as they start researching this stuff is when it starts to come out, and they're like,
yeah.
"Oh crap!" Like there was a lot of
There's a
use of this agave in Texas.
there's a company called Desert Door. Have you heard of that
Hmm.
brand? They do
Nah,
Sotol.
that's yeah.
These guys,
Oh,
these guys,
it sounds familiar. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think Desert, it's usually called Desert Spoon or something, right? But like they called it Desert Door as their brand, and they started harvesting them wild, which is pretty cool,
Yeah.
and like going on other ranches around here, and people are like,
Hmm.
so tall, I don't want that. What you take it, do whatever you want with it, and
Totally.
that's
Yeah,
how they started their brand. It's pretty cool,
I think
and there's a
that's
long
dope.
history of
Yeah.
that too.
I mean, there's several Decilerion, which is what Sotol is,
Hmm.
species that are native to Texas, and all of them actually could be used for spirits. So that might be something you want to explore as well. It's like, these natives, people have been using them, consuming them, for thousands of years in the area. You know, it's interesting to me because I had a similar case here in California. It's like I found out Hespero Yucca Whippley had been used for like 7,000 years in LA
Hmm.
County, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, so there's an agave-like plant in the agave family that they had been roasting exactly like agave. And as a historian, I know up until like the 60s, Yucca agave were in the same. They were seen as like the same. So I'm like, man, these guys probably thought it was agave. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like they're using it the same way. Uh, but what I'm getting at is because we have little researched a lot of these tribes and their history, and they haven't found that they've utilized it for alcohol. But I definitely think it's the case as a historian
Yeah,
because I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, so you're telling me the knowledge of a growing agave transferred over, the roasting transferred over, they brought plants over, they ate them. So everything of agave in Mexico, they were doing the same over here, but they didn't know the alcohol portion. To me, it sounds sketch. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I think we just
That's
haven't
just
found the
where their
research on it.
knowledge just magically ended right there. It's like,
Yeah, it's like,
nope.
nah, they were, dude, agave has gone as far as Mississippi as a historian. Same with corn. And I'm like, they're finding this shit in caves and, the Southwest and the East. And I'm like, all right, man,
Yeah,
I don't think they didn't know how to make alcohol, to be honest with you.
yeah.
But I bring that up because there's thousands of years of history that they need to explore more because
I
people were
totally
using
agree.
it in very similar styles.
Yeah.
And as far as they knew, many of this Decilerion, many of this Yucca was agave. It was only reclassified by botanists a couple decades
Yeah.
ago. So um, to me, yeah, like I said, it sounds a little sketch. I think that they definitely knew how to make alcohol from it. I've read a few studies where the weirdest thing, they made alcohol from the flower stalks. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Like they ground up, fermented it, and made alcohol from the
Agave
flower stalk.
stocks?
Yes.
Interesting.
And I'm like, if they knew how to do that, I mean,
Yeah.
the pina is like the more useful part of the plant,
Yeah.
you know? So it's lining up for me as a historian. And that's even
Yeah.
something I might want to research, to be honest with you. Like,
Yeah.
and they actively do it, but it's like, I'd love to like dedicate some time to actually like going out and trying to find these roast pits and seeing, maybe if I could find remnants of something that would describe or, prove the fact that they were making alcohol with this agave.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't, it lines up, but it just, the proof isn't there
I,
yet. So that's why I
I
tell people
love
my
that stuff,
personal
man.
opinion is they made it, but I can't prove it, so I'm not gonna lie to you,
Yeah.
But
Well, the more
I
you
definitely think they messed
find
with
in
it
that,
for sure.
share with me whatever you find, because I eat that stuff up, man. I love the
Um,
history. I love the archaeology of
yeah,
it all. There's I
I mean, I just
recommend
posted
for
today
you
about yeah.
the
What's up?
Center for Big Bend Studies.
Yeah.
You should follow them. You should check them out. Sol Ross University. These are all
Hmm.
like far west Texas. They do a lot of really cool exploration studies. Big Bend
Yeah,
area. There's so much there.
I'm trying to learn as much as I can too. It's a tough thing, because you're still trying to farm too, but it's like that's the only way to advance. You got to learn a little bit, read a little bit. It's like people, as a consultant, ask me so much questions and they think like I'm a super genius and I know everything. I don't. Like, I'm a historian. What I do is I
Read
take that
nonstop.
question and I read the fuck out of it, and
Yeah,
then I go back to them with like essays of shit, and
yeah,
they're like, "How'd you know this?" I'm like, "That's what a researcher does."
yeah.
He finds the solutions.
It's tough,
So,
man. I just,
a lot of it is
you know,
is trying to teach people how to do that too. I'm like, these are the resources you might find these papers at. This is the universities you got to read, some of their stuff, like, but little by little they learn.
it's hard for me too. I
For
told
sure.
you, I'm a lawyer. I'm in a law firm. Like, I get to go to my farm once a week, and it's hard enough
Totally.
just to get like 5 or 6 hours of work in, and it's hard to do that.
Yeah. That's how I started, man. That's why I know exactly how you feel for, the first complete cycle of my agave, the first 6, 7 years. I was only here once or twice a week, minimal hours. And that's why I think a lot of, the issues I couldn't, like, it was trial by fire, you know what I mean? Because now when I'm on the farm, I can realize what's happening. Like, I'm part of the ecosystem almost,
Yeah,
And it's like you start realizing like, oh, okay, like, I start seeing more birds coming and I'm like, oh, I don't need to hand pollinate as much as I thought. I start seeing more rodents coming. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't need to, work on these areas as much, or on these I need to work more on. But if you're not there as much, it's hard to learn. So it's like, that's why I always tell people, make it a minimal care system, right?
hmm
If I had to tarp something, for instance, during those 6, 7 years, it would have died.
yeah,
If I had to water something during those years, they would have died.
hmm
If like I planted Americana, Vilmoriana, a bunch of stuff that I got from gardens, like half of it died, I mean, and then I learned what species made it and stuff. So it's like,
yeah.
you know, once a week it's tough, but it's doable for sure. You just gotta stick to how I'm saying, low labor, low input, and low amount of care for those agave. You'll be chill.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's
some
interesting how
agave,
you start
man.
to learn the signs, though, right? Like
Yeah.
I have this, the deer have been eating some of our agaves, and I see, like, I go in and I see all the grass laid over, right? And I'm
Yeah.
showing my son, I'm like, look, they were bedding down right there. You can see where they're
Mhm.
laying. And it's funny, the picture that I posted to my story when I said I was going to jump on with you,
Yep.
that picture of that agave that I posted, it looks perfectly pruned. That agave was eaten down by deer, and it's
Yeah.
hilarious how they ate them. Like, they perfectly pruned it, and they're like 3 or 4 leaves
Well,
sticking up. It just looks
it's some of the
perfect. Like, they
things
just ate it.
we're talking about. It's like, the deer is almost like giving you a compliment. It's like, you did a good job. This agave is
Yeah,
really healthy and nutritious for me. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And it's like, a diseased or a weak plant, you don't see a lot of that being killed by rodents. It's like they almost go for like very healthy stuff. That's why, like I said, I see it almost as a compliment. You just gotta learn how to work with the animals. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I would
Mhm.
love to know? It would be really hard to study, but someone could do it. Is like, what happens inside that agave when like the saliva of the deer comes in or something. Like
Yeah.
I bet there's something going on inside that agave. Like it might be pushing
Oh
out new
yeah.
pups. It might be saying, "Oh, I got to defend myself. I got to survive." Is sugar content
Yeah.
going up? Like I wonder
I've
what's
had
going on.
some, I have a lot of different theories and experiences with that. You know what I mean? It's like I've had agave that, like, I call them, like extreme puppers, because essentially, like, I harvest as soon as a pup gets to 5, 6 inches from them, I
Mm-hmm.
harvest it, and then they'll put out more, and then there's some agave that, I'll give you an example. I have some agave Americana. Their average production of pups might be on a dry farm system 10 to 15 pups a year, right? Where I have another couple of agave Americanas that they're pumping out 100 pups a year. And
Wow.
those are specifically because I'm harvesting them all the time, right? And I'm knowing that this agave has already started to react to what I'm doing. So if I didn't take away the pups, it would kind of top out around 30, 40.
Mm-hmm.
But one time I went around and harvested them all. I didn't pick or choose. I just got them all 40. And then like a month or two later, I saw like another 40. And I'm like, shit, man, all right, I'm gonna just start harvesting more often instead of letting them get big. And that prioritizes the mother plant to grow more sugars. So getting to your second point, it makes the mother plant start to prioritize more of its pinia growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, what I also started noticing is, yeah, just like all these little details like that. I was just like, okay, well, the plants that were bitten by the goats,
Mm-hmm.
they started producing more pups because they thought, in my opinion, I think that they started to believe that they were going to get eaten by this animal. So then what I started doing is taking the agaves through the rows more often so that pup production could go up, because the agaves react to that animal predation. So it might be funny. You might start to see a young little pup come out of that agave just because of what that deer did.
Mm-hmm.
And even another point off this, like, there's a lot of points off that, deer thing you just gave me, but it's like when you're trimming down the agave like that, its natural defense mechanism is saponins, right? So saponins I'm focusing on heavy saponin agaves because I want to focus on maybe potentially exploring a lot of the biomedical stuff with them, right?
Okay.
So if and here's where I'm going with that. If the deer predation causes a acceleration of saponin production in the agave, that's very crucial information.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That is going to be valuable for someone who's focusing their agave for saponins. So a lot of that stuff very pertinent. Definitely when I
It'd be
see the
interesting.
predation, I'm like,
Is there a way to
yeah,
test for that stuff? I mean, I guess you could prune a leaf and
you,
test the
you
content
got
of
to
it, the
do
nutrient
controlled,
content.
yeah, probably controlled trial of like the same species in the same farm, and then planting them kind of like in the same maybe row, and trying to see, you harvest one its pups and you don't on the other one. And that's kind of what I've done here. It's like, the agave americanas that are high pup producers are the same cultivar as the ones that are medium pup producers.
Mm.
I don't know what evolved or what changed or what small difference there is, right? But they came from the same mother. So as I start to think, that's the stuff I want to explore. What you're saying, it's like, what is causing that? If it's not the animal, so you would just have to do a controlled trial. Just grow a bunch of them and start harvesting pups and leaves off one, and the same other one don't do it, and you
Yeah.
know, um, write your results. But from just like observation, that's pretty much been what I've been observing, and it's leading to how I'm managing my agave, because before I wouldn't take them through the rows as often, and now I'm like, well, I could get another 30-40% of pup production if I bring them through the rows. So but then I know that like if they go through the rows, they're gonna be eating a lot more leaves. So it's like, if I want them for fiber, you get me, like it's trade-offs for
Yeah.
sure. So you might, if I'm selling plants right now, that's why the pups are okay, yeah, I want to do that. But you might want to actually do the opposite and not bring them through the rows as often if you are focusing on fiber, right? So then, yeah, just being adaptable for sure on that end. It's like, once again, you can't just focus your agave farm on one thing because, it's going to be tough.
Well, man, I'm gonna have to call it, I think.
Yeah, man, it's getting late on us.
Yeah,
Especially over there, huh? It's like 10.
yeah, it's like 10.
No worries, man. It was
We
a
got
good,
we
I
we've
think,
had the flu going through our house.
education talk.
We got two kids, and so
Oh, yeah.
hopefully my
No
wife
worries.
forgives me for having this interesting agave conversation while we got that going on.
Well, I'll have it up line, and I'm gonna put it on the podcast soon, and then you can listen to it audio or watch it or whatever on wherever. But yeah, man, I think it was a great convo, and we got a lot of education out for people that might be wanting to explore agave, and answered a lot of questions for them. I mean, that's kind of why I wanted you on here, because I know we'd go back and forth about a lot of this management and the farming style, and
Yeah,
uh, I'm really happy with this podcast because of that. Just because, like I said, we want to help the up and coming farmers not just know about tequila or
yeah.
spirits or whatever. We want to teach them how to farm.
Well,
So,
I appreciate what you're
yeah,
doing because there are not many people doing it, and I love all the folks on here that I found on Instagram that are
totally.
trying to share information. You got to share it.
Yeah,
It's
man.
There's not a lot out there, and
You ever
so
got
I always
questions?
appreciate
Hit me up.
the people with the abundance mentality. Like
Totally.
let's share information and see each other succeed. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, man. That open source environment is going to help us all accelerate our growth for sure. I agree with that. And yeah, man. Thanks for the great chat.
All right,
I
brother.
don't want to keep you too much from your family, but
Hey, man.
it was a good one, man. And I'm happy with
Absolutely
it, what we talked about.
awesome. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, brother. I'll
All right.
catch you another time.
Yes, sir. Take care.
Take out.